everybody has, I think it's 100,000 bad drawings in them. And the sooner you get them out, the sooner you can start getting good drawings out as well.
Hello, art friends, and welcome back to the Art Journey podcast, the podcast where we explore artist stories and popular art topics to help you on your own path. My name is Alex Agosto, and welcome to the show. Guys, it is officially the start of a brand new year. It's a time for brand new beginnings and a time to also look back on your progress and the year you've had in the past. And I'm really stoked about this year. At the end of the last year, I launched this podcast. I've been talking to amazing artists all around the world, and I've been getting to know you guys, and it's just been so much fun. And it's been very inspiring in my own personal life. And I'm hoping that in the upcoming year, with all the artists and all the stories that I will be sharing, I really hope that this podcast becomes an inspiration for you and your life and your journey. And I'm just really happy that you're here listening to this right now, because it means that you have invested an interest in art and you want to get better and you want to incorporate it more in your life. And that's just so cool. Before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you're really liking the show, I would super duper duper appreciate it if you just took a couple seconds of your time to rate and review the podcast. It really helps me out because it helps more people find the show, and it just helps me spread these stories over to a much larger audience so that we can help more people along their own art journeys. So yeah, if you could really do that, that would be amazing. But anyways, today's guest is super cool. So it's my first guest that is in the animation industry, which is super exciting. She is an illustrator for an award-winning show called Archer. Maybe you've heard of it. And in her own personal work, she's known for very cutesy art with a vintage flair, which I love. Her name is Savannah Alexandra, and she shares so much cool insight about her life in the animation industry, along with a lot of portfolio tips and just a lot of inspirational information and stories about her journey. So, if that is something that sounds cool to you as much as it was to me, let's give her a big warm welcome, and let's welcome Savannah Alexandra to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me on here.
Oh, no, thank you for coming. You're one of the artists I'm really admiring on Instagram right now, and
Aw,
I really love your work, and I'm so excited that we were able to have this work out for us.
thank you. I really appreciate it.
So, for those out there that who might not know you or your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Savannah Alexandra. I am an illustrator and character designer. I am an illustrator on the TV show Archer, and I also do character designs and I draw cute girls and stuff on my free time. Uh, and I like vintage fashion, specifically 1930s to 1950s, and that really influences a lot of my own personal style in my art. Um, and I love dogs, and yeah, I think that's about it. And Pokemon.
Oh, okay. I think you and I could get along really well. Yeah, I actually really got into your art after discovering some work you've done with Hogwarts girls and
Yeah,
50s fashion. Oh my god, I fell in love with that.
yeah, I really love Hogwarts, Harry Potter, like just that whole thing. And it lends itself really well to vintage fashion. And I really enjoy taking pre-existing uh pre-existing shows or whatever and turning the characters like vintage, like making them maybe in a like 1950s era or 1940s era or something. It's just something that's really entertaining to me.
And you do it really well. I feel like a lot of the work you do, I wish the originals were done that way.
Thank you.
So, why don't we go way, way back? I always ask people this, but when you were a kid, were you into art back then?
Yeah, I was. I've been drawing for honestly as long as I can remember. I have old sketchbooks that I hold on to. I never throw out any sketchbooks. So I have old
Wow.
sketchbooks from like elementary school and middle school. And I think my mom has a giant Tupperware bin of like old drawings from like elementary school and stuff that I did because I did a lot of like just weird comics in elementary school and middle school.
Mhm.
And I would get them like I wouldn't put them in a sketchbook. I would just grab like a handful of printer paper and do them all on just like loose printer paper. So the Tupperware is just full of like just loose printer paper with random comics on it.
That's amazing. It must be so crazy for you to have art that old, because I bet you more than anyone could see like the progression of your art over time.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like to hold on to it because first of all, it's fun to look through and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so bad." But then it's also fun to see I can remember certain pieces more vividly than others and certain pieces where I feel like I did really well and I can see like, oh, this was a piece of art that I did that was like the jumping off point for this style or something like that, which was it's pretty cool to see. I don't know, I like keeping old sketchbooks. Some people don't like it, but I like to flip through them sometimes and see all of my OCs that I did and just
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Man, I'm one of those people that I wish I had saved my sketchbooks and stuff when I was younger. The problem is that I didn't get into keeping sketchbooks until kind of not old, because it's high school. You're not old, but like high school is the first time I started keeping a sketchbook, because my art teacher was like, you kind of need to start doing that in order to get into art school.
Mhm.
But so I only had like two or three sketchbooks from back then. And then I'm from Puerto Rico, and I'm sure you heard about the hurricane that hit.
Yeah.
Well, my house, or my parents' house back then, got flooded, and so all my work
Oh,
got totally destroyed. But honestly,
no.
it's probably for the best. I remember visiting 2 years ago and flipping through them, and I was like, "Eesh, I don't want to see this again." It was kind of cool to see like what I was doing then when I didn't know what I was doing to
Yeah.
now where I still don't know what I'm doing, but
It's
but
always a learning process. Artists are always learning no matter what.
I know. I feel like we're always our worst critics. So even people who you think their art is like perfect, even they think they're not that good.
Yeah, it's true. I was actually listening to a podcast, a different podcast I think it was last year, and they had Loish. You know who Loish is?
Yes.
And she was on there and she was talking about how she doesn't like to scroll through Instagram because it makes her feel really bad about her own artwork.
Mhm.
And I was like, "But you're Lowish." Like,
I
so
know.
many artists love your stuff, but I guess it just applies to everybody, huh? So,
It really does. By any chance, was that podcast The Art Side of Life?
um,
Did you listen to it like on YouTube by any
yeah, I listened
chance?
to it on YouTube. It was by I think his name was Oakley,
Okay.
or something
Oh,
Oakley.
yeah, he has a podcast called The Oakley Academy, so
Yeah,
that
I think
might
that
be
was
what.
him.
Okay. Oh, yeah, 'cause, The Art Side of Life also had her, and man, it's so crazy to hear artists like that be like, "I can't watch other artists' work because it makes me feel bad," and I'm like, "Dude, do you know who you are?"
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
So, I guess kind of on that topic, when did you start taking art seriously?
In middle school,
Mhm.
I had an art teacher. His name was Mr. Ward. I'm used to saying
Ooh.
professor now because I was in because of
Oh,
college, but
true.
his name was Mr. Ward, and he was one of the first art teachers who kind of told me like you could do this as a job. Like being an artist doesn't have to just be a hobby. You can do it as a job. And then at the same time, around that time, I don't know exactly when, but around middle school time, Nickelodeon used to air these like bumpers between the commercials that showed behind the scenes of people who worked at Nickelodeon and what their jobs were and everything.
Mhm.
And there was one that I saw. I remember I was watching SpongeBob, and which is amazing. I love that's one of my favorite shows still to this day. And they did one about this guy. I forget who it was, but he was talking about how he was a character designer as a job, and his
Mhm.
job was just to, create the characters for the show. And I was like, that's a job? And I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. And so I think coupled with my teacher and then seeing that both kind of made me go like, all right, I'm going to really try to hone this.
That's really nice that you had, it sounds like you had a really important influence as far as, like, art goes in your younger years.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people, I feel, have someone that encourages to pursue art. A lot of people, I think, do it out of 100% out of their own volition, but having someone tell you, like, that it's possible, I'm sure is very powerful, especially as someone a young person.
Yeah. It definitely is really, really helpful. Um, it's great to have like someone encourage you, especially when you're young.
Yes.
My parents have always been also very much encouraging. They never told me once, like, "Are you sure you want to be an artist?" They were very much like, "Yeah, go for it." So that was also very helpful as well.
Yes, I feel like that can make a huge difference as a young person wanting to pursue art because I think a lot of people end up not pursuing it at all due to lack of support.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense if everyone around you is always telling you, like, it's not a job or it's just a hobby or whatever, then you'll kind of internalize that and think, I can't really go anywhere with this. But you can, you definitely can. You can do stuff. You can make it a career.
Yeah, totally. And so I know you mentioned earlier that you went to college
Mhm.
for art. What did you major in?
I majored in animation.
Oh, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, how was your experience in art school?
Um, in general, I enjoyed it, or my teachers were really great. My teachers were fantastic. They were all part of the industry for a while. I had one teacher who worked at Disney for like years. Um, so a lot of their input was always really helpful. The classes were really interesting. I loved just learning. Like I really like just learning about stuff. It's just I don't know, it's really interesting and fascinating just to learn like new tips, new tricks, new ways of doing things that you thought maybe you knew already. Maybe you found an easier way to do it now. So I really loved that. Um, the downside is art schools can be stupid expensive.
Yes.
So I unfortunately am in a lot of debt. But
I'm with you.
but the school like the classes and the teachers were really really great.
And I feel like there are some valuable skills that you do get out of being in art school. One that I've brought up a few times in past episodes that I've recorded is handling critique.
Yes.
I feel like that's a skill that's harder, not impossible, but it's harder to acquire when you're by yourself. Because in art school, you're kind of faced with the reality of having other people see and judge your work.
Yeah, well, in our art school, every time you finished a project, when the due date was that day, everyone had to present it, and it was just open to critique. Teachers, students, doesn't matter. Anyone in that class could say something if they liked it, didn't like it, why. And obviously, no one was allowed to be like, "That sucks."
Yeah, of
But,
course.
like, you know, we every class, every time we had to turn in something, there was critique always. So, you got kinda used to it, and you kind of learned to almost, like, thrive on it and grow from it
Mhm.
because people will notice things that you don't notice because either you're just looking at it too long or
Mhm.
you think you have an idea that you're articulating one way, but it's coming off as something completely different. So I always liked critiques because it was nice to hear other people's opinions and their views on it.
Totally. That's something I miss from being in art school. I went to school for jewelry design,
Oh,
very
wow.
different, but yeah, and that was one of the things that in the beginning I hated. I hated when cuz people always had stuff to say about my designs cuz I was the quirky designer that was making like weird super hyper girly costume jewelry.
That's awesome, though.
But yeah, I think that now back then I was very self-conscious about it because a lot of people were like, "That's not very refined and elegant." But I now looking back, I still miss it because I miss hearing openly and honestly what other designers thought,
Yeah,
'cause, the designer and an artist's eye is very different from, just a regular person. They see things you don't see, and like you said, sometimes you're just too close to your own work to see the flaws in it.
yeah, I agree.
And so, art school, after it, did you immediately start working in art in the industry?
Kind of. I had a few months where I was basically living off of whatever freelance job I could get. Um, I was also trying to just apply to just like regular retail jobs, and
Mhm.
for whatever reason, I just wasn't landing any of them.
Wow.
So I think the problem was I was just kind of like, some retail jobs you just end up being overqualified for, and then
Yeah.
they don't grab you. So um, I was applying to retail jobs. I wasn't getting those. I was just working off of freelance, whatever I could get, like anything. I was
Mhm.
living off of like $20 for groceries. I was
Wow.
like really, really broke when I got out of school. But then I started working at a studio. Let's see, I think I graduated in May, and then I started working. Well, I graduated early. I graduated in March, and then I walked in May.
Mhm.
But then I started my studio job in, I think it was July. So between March to July was when I was trying to just, like, take whatever I could get.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I feel like that's a pretty common experience, especially for people in creative majors.
Yeah,
And especially depending what time of the year you graduate, because, for example, May is a kind of a good time because when you graduate in May, a lot of the companies know there's a lot of fresh meat on the market.
yeah,
And so that's when they're like really hunting. But at the same time, the competitiveness is very high
yeah,
because you and like 6 billion other people just graduated.
yep,
And then in spring, if you graduate early in spring, the good thing is that you're not competing with as many people, but it's also a time of the year where not a lot of people are expecting
yeah,
new grads. So it's like both times of the year have like their pros and
yeah,
cons.
yep.
But so that first job, how was that for you? What were you doing?
It was actually really good. I got a job just doing animation for bumpers, which I don't know if you know what bumpers are, but they are the thing between the show and the commercial that say like, "We'll be right back," or like next up is this,
Yeah.
or they'll do a little like fun little animation and then be like PBS or Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. Like
Mhm.
those are called bumpers. So I did some animation for PBS Kids for their bumpers. They were like I think like a minute long,
Mhm.
and then I then I think right after that I started working with the same studio on a kid's um, educational video game for
Mhm.
I think it was pre-K to oh I don't remember. I think it's pre-K to third grade or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's about learning uh, math and just like basic.
Yeah, like kinda like those jumpstart
Yeah, it's
games.
very similar to like Jumpstart stuff like that. So we did
Mhm.
animation for that, and that was pretty fun. That lasted about a year. So I worked with them on that project.
That sounds like such a fun first job.
Yeah, it was actually really fun. I'm really lucky that I was able it just kinda happened, like, I didn't know it was coming, they just kinda got it, and then I was already there, so they just pulled me on. So
That's amazing. I actually, just before this interview, watched your reel
oh, yeah,
that's on your website, and I saw some of the PBS bumpers, and I was
yeah,
like, "Oh my god." Remember as a kid loving the bumpers that Nickelodeon had,
yeah,
and well, I was a Nickelodeon kid, and I loved the Nick Jr.
yeah.
bumpers. Do you remember Face?
Yes. "Hey
I
there,
loved
face here."
Face. Oh my god, he was so cute. So, animation, I feel like, is one of those fields that has been hot for a few years. Like, I feel like a lot of the people that, I talked to and met through, art school, almost everyone who was in illustration or animation wanted to work in animation. And I feel like it's such an interesting field to work in because not only do you have to worry about composition and color and all the normal stuff, but you also have to be or not worried, but like you have to keep in mind motion.
Yeah, so animation is a very large field. Um,
Mhm.
Most of the time, if you're working at a studio or even just doing animation, unless you are freelancing and you're doing it all yourself, which
Mhm.
I don't recommend.
Yeah, right.
A lot of work. I mean, if you can do it, go for it, but it is a lot of work. But most studios and stuff split everything into departments. So
Mhm.
if you're doing animation at a studio, you're just doing animation. You don't have to worry about like backgrounds or anything like that because everything's already laid out for you. You just have to actually animate it. So you have storyboards to
Yeah.
follow and everything. But it is a really kind of like robust field to get into because when you're in school learning about it, you do learn about everything. Everything that goes into animation from, writing a story to storyboarding to screen design because the way that your eye reads information on a screen is different than the way that it reads it in like a book.
Mhm.
And the way that your eye registers motion through film, it has to make sense. So there's certain rules that you have to adhere to that you learn in a screen design class. And then you learn, character design, you learn actual animation. So you learn everything, which I really like because you kind of slowly figure out what part of the animation industry you're drawn to the most.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny because there is a YouTuber I watch who does background design for a show on Disney,
Mhm.
and she was talking about the animation industry a while ago, and just blew my mind how many different jobs you can have in animation, you know?
Yeah.
You can be actually animating, you could be doing character design
Mhm.
or just props or just background painting,
Mhm.
and it's one of those things that I did not realize that, just saying, "I wanna work in animation" is not enough. You have
Yeah.
to like, there's so much you can do in it. So what in particular in animation are you focusing on right now? Or what's your specialty?
Well, when I got out of school, I was doing just animation for a while. Um,
Mhm.
until I was really starting to feel like it's cool and I like it, but I don't have the same passion for it as I do with like character design. Um, and I'm really, really drawn to character design, and I'm really actually drawn to just like concept art in general. Um, so currently I'm trying to re-steer, I guess, my path from coming out of school and just taking animation jobs to now focusing more on pre-production stuff. And pre-production is like character design and concept art and all of that stuff that you do before you actually animate.
Yeah. That's cool.
Hmm.
It's just so crazy to think of.
Yeah.
Everything you could add, like, anything you could do in animation, there's whatever you think there's probably even more jobs.
Yeah, there's so much. And then there's jobs that you wouldn't even think they would need in animation, but they do, especially if you're getting into 3D because there's a lot of technical stuff.
Wow, yeah, right?
So 2D has its own 2D and 3D share a lot of the same jobs, but then 2D has its own things and 3D has its own things as well. So
Yeah, right?
yeah,
Oh my god.
it's like a
So
big
crazy to think
tree.
about. Yeah. And so one of the things that really caught my eye, and I didn't even realize this until a while after following you, was that in your bio it says that you work on the show Archer,
Mhm.
which my boyfriend absolutely loves. So when I told him that I was having you on the podcast, I was like, "You'll never believe what show she works on."
Yeah.
So what has your how well, let's start. How did you, I guess, find that job? I know that one question I've heard a lot from people wanting to get into animation is like, how do you find these jobs?
So specifically with Archer was it just happened to be that the studio is in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where
Mhm.
I'm based. So I just applied. It actually took me, I think, 3 times to apply. I did a test for them each time. So I did 3 tests for them over the past like 2 years of trying to apply to get in.
Wow.
And then finally, in the last, I think it was the third or fourth test, they were finally like, they offered me the job and I got in. So it was a little bit of a struggle, but um, I got in there. So I've been working there for about a year now. Um, I think just getting into studios in general is kind of can be tricky,
Mhm.
in the sense that uh, I don't think that you need school. Um, what you need is just a good portfolio, um, and make sure that your portfolio is catered towards the job that you're applying for. And then also, it's really, really helpful to know people. This animation industry really relies on who you know because it's such a tight knit community and you work with so many people and it's very much focused on teamwork. So they want to make sure that the people you're working with are people you can vouch for and who are good team members, basically.
Mhm.
So it really helps to get into the community, get to know people who are working in the industry, go to events maybe that those people are at, but don't try to just like network to network. Get to
Yeah.
actually know people and, genuinely start talking to them and learning about them and, but try to get involved in those, maybe going to, uh, I don't know, events that they hold or something. The one good thing about school is, for me, school has a lot of pros and cons. College,
Mhm.
the pro to it is that you do make connections through school, whether it's through teachers who can vouch for you, the school who can help you find a job, or even students who have gotten a job in somewhere who you worked with in school who you can talk to, and then they can put in a good word for you.
Yeah, and those are actually really good points that you hit that I think is so important for people to hear. And I feel like it's not advice that you see a lot when people are giving advice for like art careers.
Mhm.
It's networking, but like quality networking with people in your industry. And the bigger one is creating a portfolio geared towards what you want to do,
Yeah.
because I see time and time again people building portfolios that are either all over the place or they're centered around one thing, and you know for a fact that that's not what that person's going for and it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's so important, like, don't create a portfolio just for the sake of what you think will look good in it. Make a portfolio catered towards the job that you want, because that will help you attract the job that you want.
Right. Yeah, there's um kind of two camps too with portfolio stuff, where
Mhm.
some people say that you should be catering your style and everything towards the job that you want, and other people say to just do you, and
Mhm.
whatever comes to you because they're attracted to what you're doing. Um, I've
Yeah.
struggled with both, or kind of tried both in a sense. I think it kind of comes down to what the person wants to do, but yeah, if you're
Mhm.
like trying to get into Disney, for a long time, Disney really wanted people's portfolios. Sorry if you hear weird noises, it's my dog.
It's okay.
um, a long time, for a long time, I think Disney, and I can't be certain for this because I've never worked at Disney, so,
Yeah, of course.
but from what I've heard is, for a while, Disney very much wanted portfolios to be kind of that Disney style, quote unquote. But I
Mhm.
think lately they've been more open to various styles, and they just want to see storytelling, like a very clear, defined storytelling in your portfolio. So it kind of depends. And I think a lot of things are changing now with access to the internet, and, everyone's more connected, and artists are slowly branding themselves as opposed to being like a cog in the machine.
Mhm. I totally agree. And I think there's definitely value in mixing both portfolio strategies,
Yes.
because you definitely want to keep an essence of yourself and your own work in it, because
Mhm.
you do want them to know who you are as a person, which is reflected in your art. But you also need to have work that maybe is not necessarily 100% you, but it is catered towards what you would like to work towards in the future.
Right. And I think if you have a solid portfolio, most recruiters can look at it and tell. Even if the style isn't 100%, they can look at it and tell that you have it. Like, my personal style is very different than Archer.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
like, my style is very cartoony, um, very cutesy, and then the Archer style is way more realistic and, more like, quote unquote, like adult looking a little bit. So, but they still, you know, I guess hired me because they liked my work.
Yeah, of course, because they saw the quality of it and the potential of what you can do with your
Right.
skills. And so, working on Archer, what are some challenges you've faced in the work that you do?
Um, I think I don't know if there's really that many challenges.
Mhm.
Because what I think the biggest thing is they have a very specific way that they do it. I don't know how much I'm allowed to reveal, so I kind of want to be a little
Yeah, you
um
can be vague.
vague on it, just because I don't know if I can or can't talk about it. But they have a very specific pipeline that they do.
Mhm.
Um, and when you first start off, it's there's a lot. There's a lot to learn, and a lot of the ways they want all of the files set up and everything is really specific. But then once you get the hang of it, it kind of becomes second nature, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I know what I'm doing."
Yeah. And so then what are some of your favorite things in your job?
Um, I really like I like the fact that I get to work on something that is very outside of my own comfort zone. So
Mhm.
it helps me in my own work because um, it's really pushing me outside of the box for what I normally draw, which
Yeah.
I really like. Also, I just the studio itself is really great. Like the people are really nice. The studio is very accommodating. I When I first started there last November, I was there for like I think like 2 weeks or something, and then I got in a very bad car accident.
Oh
Um,
my
and I
god.
broke my hand, my drawing
Uh,
hand.
that's
And
crazy.
the studio was like so accommodating, and they were like, "What can we do to help you? Is there anything that we can do to make it easier for you? Because we understand that a car accident is really stressful, so we don't want work to be another stress." So our my car ended up getting totaled, and graciously, one of my really, really good friends down here lent me her second car. But
Mhm.
my studio was like, if you want, we'll pay for Ubers to and from your house. Like they were so, so kind. Um, which really,
That's
really,
amazing.
yeah, it really makes a huge difference when a studio is willing to really work with you and they actually care about you as a person. Or just any work
Yeah.
environment in general, doesn't have to be a studio.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's so helpful to work in a place where you feel cared for and like heard and treated like a person and not just another cog in the
Yeah,
machine. That's amazing. That's definitely a super big plus to working where you
yeah,
work.
that's really great.
And so I guess going backtracking a little bit, I didn't quite get what so I heard that you do kind of pre-production things on the show. What exactly
Um,
is your work there?
I'm an illustrator. So what I do there is um it's kind of hard to explain because they have a very specific way that they do things, but if you can imagine like a paper doll,
Mhm.
um my job is to basically draw all of the parts of the paper doll according to what pose they need for that shot. So if
Oh.
it's somebody who is like they're pointing and then they, I don't know, do a fist bump up in the air, I have to draw like the point, then maybe like the middle drawing between the point and the fist bump, and then like the down fist and then the up fist.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get what you're talking about. So um you're basically illustrating the most important dramatic points of the animation and then the animators fill in the gaps to make it move.
Yes. So basically, if anything about animation, is we're kind of doing like the keys of the
Yes.
animation, and then the animators take that and they use our pieces that we made and they animate it.
That is
Kind of
so cool.
sneezed.
And so what's I guess your job title
I'm an
then
illustrator.
officially? Oh, so that's what it's
Yeah, I'm
called.
just an illustrator. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Wow, I have well, I knew that that was definitely something that had to take place, but I didn't know that that was like one person like that's what people are dedicated to.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing. So, as we were talking about like your you working in illustration. So I know that apart from working in illustration for Archer, you also work on illustration for yourself, right?
Yeah. Um, I graduated with a degree in animation, but I'm kind of trying to gear myself now more towards illustration and character design.
Mhm.
Um, so I just do just illustration for fun, just of
Yeah.
like ideas that I have. And then at the same time, like I'll do those, and then at the same time, I always kind of have my own story ideas, and I'm kind of working on one right now that I'm planning on pitching. So
Ooh.
yeah, I'm hoping that that pans out right now. So, but it's still in the works.
Yeah, but that sounds super exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
And you hit kind of something that I feel really passionate about where I feel like artists who are working full time in art should still in their spare time pursue art that is geared towards they like personally, because a lot of people are in your same boat where the work they do at work is not necessarily their style.
Yeah,
And I think for you to kind of not lose your love for art, I think it's very important to dedicate time to working on art that is very personal.
yeah,
Would you say that that's important to you as well?
yeah, I think so. Because I am very much drawn to like cutesy,
Yeah,
um, cute girls, I guess, to draw. I like drawing those. And I don't know, I just can't not do it. Like, even if I'm tired, sometimes I just like, I want to draw. I have an idea. I want to get it out. I think it's very important to wind down and do things that are not art related to
mhm.
recharge yourself. But also, I think it is important as well to just do art that you like. And I think I have a problem with this a lot. I know a lot of other artists struggle with this too, but especially with social media, Instagram, all of this stuff is artists can kind of tend to get caught in the grind of you know, I got to get all of this artwork up, have to keep my social media going, make sure that I'm posting, doing this with the algorithm, blah 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 blah. I have to be producing artwork that is always amazing, that that I can put in my portfolio so that if someone sees me, they'll like my stuff and blah blah blah. Like just always thinking about the hustle and the grind and like getting that
Yeah.
all and not focusing on art as something that you just enjoy, that you like.
Mhm.
Um and I struggle with it actually. I've been posting like every day for the past almost year.
Wow.
And this month, like this holiday season was like the I kind of told everyone like, "Hey, I'm taking like basically like a month break to recharge and step back a little bit and
Totally.
focus on my stuff and not have to worry about like the algorithm of Instagram."
Which is crazy right now.
It's crazy. It's nuts. And you have to do so much to stay on top of it. And, my heart breaks and I wouldn't say that I have a ton of followers on Instagram, comparatively to like other artists who have like, 500,000, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but, I feel bad for artists who are struggling with the algorithm because it's really tricky to get a hang of. I mean, it's something that I struggle with as well. I think everybody, it's like a uphill battle.
Yeah, definitely. I hear about it all the time. And it definitely is very important, like you said, for every once in a while to step back and remember that you have to take care of yourself outside of art as well.
Yeah.
And so, for the people out there who want to be doing what you do for a living, what advice do you have for them?
Um, my advice is really just to keep working at it. Like, you just have to. not give up. Um, I know it sounds super cliche, but I think my advice is just to keep drawing. I say this to everybody all the time because one of my teachers told this to me, and I think it's so great. I can't remember exactly the right number. I might get the number wrong, but I think he said everybody has, I think it's 100,000 bad drawings in them. And the sooner you get them out, the sooner you can start getting good drawings out as well, which basically translates to just keep drawing, like nonstop. Keep drawing, keep learning, push yourself out of your comfort zone, do things that you don't normally feel interested in doing. Like when I was younger, I hated doing life drawing. I thought it was so boring.
Mm.
I didn't want to draw. Why do I have to draw plants? Like, flowers. Why do I have to draw this mug? Like, so stupid. I just want to draw anime. Like, like I didn't want to do any of that. But having to do it, you start realizing how important it is because if you build a really good foundation, um, then you can break the rules and work off of that, and you learn a lot of stuff. You learn how to make your art look better. Might not be something you're super interested in, but practicing that stuff, working from life, helps you get an eye for what looks right. um,
Yeah, I completely agree.
and then also try to try to connect with other artists, but genuinely not. I think people can tell when you're just trying to network for network's sake.
Oh yeah.
Um, but genuinely, like, hit up artists that you like, maybe ask a few questions, stuff like that. Take classes, or there's a lot of online classes you can take. You don't necessarily have to go to school. There's a lot of stuff online. Um, and it's just really building up a good portfolio. And if you get rejected, don't give up. Because, like I said earlier in the podcast, um, I applied to um, work on Archer like 3 or 4 times, and I didn't get
Mhm.
in those 3 or 4 times. They didn't accept me, so it wasn't until I think it was the fourth time. I think it was the fourth time. It all kind of blurs together.
Yeah, I know. The years go by and you don't even realize.
Yeah, so I think like the by the fourth time, then they were like, yeah, okay. So if there's like a studio that you really want to work at, like, and you get turned down the first time, like, keep working, keep buffing up your portfolio, making it look nice, and then come back to them again. And eventually they'll start recognizing you. So,
Yeah, that's true. It's completely true, especially in creative jobs. And honestly, I think this can be applied to any job, even if someone out there listening for some reason is not interested in art, but listening to this right now. But that's still very good advice. Like, just because the place you really want to work at rejects your application once, does not mean you can't apply again and again and again.
yeah.
I feel like also with every application you get better because you already know what they're looking for in art. Sometimes if you think of it, um one tip I give to people is if you get rejected, reply and just politely ask why and for feedback.
Yeah, that's
um
always really helpful.
yeah, they like that. First off, not many people do it.
Mhm.
And second off, you can get a lot of insight because sometimes you don't get rejected because you're bad. You just get rejected because there's one slight thing that's off that they would like to be different.
Yeah.
And if you can find out what that is and correct it or accommodate your portfolio a little bit for it, it could be that the next time you apply or the time after that, they accept you because you're showing that you can adapt to feedback and to their needs.
Right. And also that, yeah, basically if you apply, and they reject you, and you sometimes it's oh, I remember what it was. Sometimes it's not even you. Sometimes it's just timing. Um,
Yes.
if you apply and you don't get in, like maybe it's not even you. Maybe they're just not looking for that right now. And maybe in a few months they are. Or maybe, animation studios are there's always things changing. It's never super steady, or a lot of animation studios are, unless you're like working at somewhere that has a very established thing.
Yeah.
Um, but usually I think a lot of people will sometimes start out at smaller studios that do a lot of like commercial work and client work. And with those types of studios, they're getting new projects all the time. All the time. And so, maybe you might not be a good fit for one project, but then you might be an amazing fit for another project. So sometimes it's just timing.
Yes. And just learning to develop that grit to just keep trying even in the face of rejection, because that's just kind of the name of the game in the creative genre. You get rejected, and you just use those rejections to make your work stronger.
Yeah, that's true.
And eventually there will be that person that looks at your work and you end up being exactly what they need.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's amazing advice for anyone looking to get into any job that they want to in the creative sphere.
Yeah.
So, what are some exciting things that you're working on? I know you mentioned that you're kind of developing a story you want to pitch. So, what is that for? For a show or for what?
Hopefully, if everything pans out, it would be for a show. I've posted some stuff about it, like some little drawings on my Instagram and Facebook page. Um,
Is it by any chance? I don't know if you can tell me if I'm in the right plane. Is it the toucan cat?
yes, Two Cat.
Oh my god. I love that character so much.
Yeah, so I'm working on a story with him. Um, it's called Griffinheim, and um, I can't talk much about it.
Yeah, of
I'm,
course.
currently working on a lot of stuff, and it has to. I think in order to pitch, you kind of have to keep a lot of stuff hush hush. But
Mhm.
um, hopefully, fingers crossed, crossing fingers, toes, everybody's fingers, my husband's fingers, my dog's fingers, if my dog had
Oh.
fingers, everybody's fingers that it works out, and people like it and it gets picked up somewhere. Um, if not, I'm just gonna trudge through and try again. So,
Yeah. Oh my god, I'll have my fingers and toes crossed for you.
thank
But yeah, that sounds like I really hope that project pans out for you, and even if it um like you said, a lot of times with those sort of things, even if it doesn't work out for you the first time, I feel like you start learning the tweaks you need to do to make it better each time.
yeah.
And I'm definitely confident that you can do something successful with that character because it's freaking
Thank
cute. And
you.
I've seen people online really love him.
Yeah, he has a little bit of fan base, which is really funny because he
Yeah.
was originally just like a little doodle, and then I kind of worked with off, like I made him with like a very vague idea in mind for a story, and then I was kind of built more of a story. But then as I built more of a story, more people were like, "I love him," and I was like, "Wow, thanks! I'm glad everyone loves him."
Yeah. He's so adorable.
Thank you.
So, I guess because since we're nearing the end, I like to ask a couple of fun questions towards the end,
Yeah.
kind of like a lightning
Oh,
round.
okay. Cool.
So, first question is, what are some of your current art inspos? So this can be like artists on Instagram or shows or
Oh,
anything.
let's see. Hold on, let me open my Instagram. So I have some that one person that I've always really liked is um Derek Yaniger.
Ooh,
He's
okay.
Derek.art. Derek Period Art on Instagram. He does a lot of mid-century vintage UPA style artwork. I actually met him at Dragon Con this past year, and he is so nice.
Yeah.
His work is awesome. I love his work. I'm trying to think who else. There's um I've always liked her stuff is a little more um PG-13, I guess is the best way to say it. It's not
Yeah.
awful, but it's a little more adult themed, but her name's Sveta Haas, I think is how you spell it. It's SVETA underscore
Okay.
HAS. She also does like kind of vintage looking like pinup girls.
Yeah.
Um, I will plug my cousin, who her work is really great. She works on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the new show that came out.
Uh,
Um,
my God,
her
I
name
love
is
that show.
Ida on Instagram. It's Ida something hem, so IDA and then something and then HEM.
Oh,
Her
okay.
work's awesome. I have two friends that I am very close with that always inspire me. Um, my friend Amber, I think her Instagram is Amber Aki Huang. Um, and it's the last name is H. Oh, she's gonna kill me. I just want to make sure that I'm doing it right. Um,
Yeah. You can look it
it's
up if you want.
Huang is the last
Okay.
name. Um, her stuff's really great. Um, there's a lot. Like there's so many artists that I follow that I'm just like obsessed with. And it's so hard. I'm also inspired by a lot of like um old artists, There is um Tex Avery and like, the artists from the 40s and 50s who did a lot of
Yeah.
cartoons. I like Chris Sanders. He's really good. He worked on I think he's the best known for doing the character designs for Lilo and Stitch.
Ooh.
Um, and then Carter Goodridge, I love his character designs. He's done a lot of character designs throughout the years for Disney and other stuff. I know he did character designs for Prince of Egypt, and he did character designs for things as recent as like Hotel Transylvania, and just like he's done a lot of stuff. And his work is very diverse, but really good.
Yeah. Ooh, you're giving me a lot of people to check out now. So, next fun question. What are some colors that you really like but you rarely get to work with?
um, that's a good question. I was gonna say like pink and teal, but I work with pastels all the time. I think the colors that I like that I really like that I don't work in are kind of like neons. I see a
Ooh.
lot of people do really cool stuff, and I don't know if you've seen the KDA music video from League of Legends.
Oh, no, not yet.
Um, they did like this K-pop group for League of Legends, and there's this one scene with the rapper, and it's all in like neon, and it looks amazing. And I've seen a lot of really great art that's come of it. And I did one myself, and it was fun because it was a colors that I don't normally work with, but I always kind of look up to people who can work in those types of colors.
Yeah, I know. I feel like you don't see them that much, and when you do, it's very striking.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, okay, that's a cool answer. I haven't gotten that one yet. And then, well, I guess to wrap it up, where can people find you and your work?
You can find me on Instagram, Savannah Alexandra Art. Facebook is the same, Savannah Alexandra Art. And then Twitter is different because it couldn't fit everything. So it's Savannah A underscore art.
Okay. And Do you have an Etsy where people can find your work for purchase?
I have an Etsy. It's Savannah Alexandra Art. It's currently on hiatus while I figure out a bunch of logistical things.
Yeah.
But I will be making an announcement when I open it back up. So feel free to follow me on social media to find out whenever that happens.
Awesome. And then for everyone interested, I will have all those links in the show notes and on the website so that you can definitely check out her work. It's gorgeous, super cute. I love it because you blend kind of like kawaii style and vintage, which is super unique.
Yeah, it's I actually was into Japanese street fashion and like Lolita and stuff like that before I got into vintage. So
Yeah,
I
I can
think
tell.
those kind of have merged in my work.
Yeah, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And I don't know if when you reopen the shop, you'll have the print available of the like Hogwarts girls. I think it's like a girl representing each house, kind
Yes.
of like looking. If you have that available, that's like definitely the thing I'm snagging.
Yeah, I'll have that up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time. It was so interesting to hear about your work in animation. I haven't really had a chance to talk to someone who is in that field, and I feel like I learned so much about it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I feel like this episode was so good for people who are interested in the animation industry, especially those who might be in the beginning stages, with curiosity. Because I don't know about you guys, but I learned so much. In the past few months, I've been kind of following animators and stuff around on the internet. And I had no idea that industry was so diverse, that there's just so many possibilities as far as working in animation. So having her kind of share a little bit about her role in it, I feel like gives you kind of an idea of the possibilities for you if you're interested in getting into animation. But on that note, why don't I share a couple of key lessons that you can take away from this episode with Savannah, okay? So, number one, save your sketchbooks. They might be cringy to look at, yes, because you're looking back at art from before you learn the knowledge that you have now. But that's also the beauty of it. You get to look back and see how far you've come, everything you've learned, how much better you are now. And it just gives you the opportunity to also train your eye. Like when you look back and you cringe, know that that's because you are seeing the flaws in your work that you couldn't see back then. And that's a really great thing to be proud of. And also, it just sharpens your eye. And also, it's just good to have a reference point so you know what needs to be improved on and what you have improved on. Two, if you want to work in animation, like we were saying before, you're really going to have to pinpoint what exactly you want to be doing. Just saying that you want to work in animation is not enough. What do you want to do in animation? Do you want to actually animate? Do you want to create characters? Do you want to do illustration? Do you want to paint backgrounds? Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a storyboard artist? It's not enough to say, oh, I want to work in animation. You have to really boil it down to what aspects of animation interest you the most, and then look into the jobs related to that. That way, when it comes time to prepare your portfolio, which is the next lesson, that'll help you out a lot. And tying into that last one, number 3, make sure your portfolio is catered to what you want to do. So if you want to work in, let's say, background painting or environment design, you will want to have a lot of background paintings and environment design in your portfolio. On the other hand, if you absolutely despise painting backgrounds, don't include a lot of them in your portfolio because you might end up getting a job you hate. And if you don't include enough of them and you do want to work in background design, you might not get the job because they might think you can't do it. So it's very important that your portfolio is focused on what you want to do, as well as showing other abilities throughout to show that you can do other stuff. But make sure it's very focused on what you do want to be doing. Otherwise, you might be a little misguided in the process of finding a job and might become a little bit more difficult for you. Anyways, guys, I hope you really got a lot out of this episode. I feel like I learned a lot from Savannah. She's like doing so much stuff. She's like working in animation. She's working on her own stuff in illustration. She's developing a side project that she's gonna pitch. And I just think it's amazing for someone, to know that you can have your job and you can also have your personal projects too. It's so important to remember to take the time to do your own stuff as well. Don't forget to take care of yourself, if you work in art or if you don't work in art, you should still be doing stuff for yourself because it'll keep that fire alive and bright. And that's what and that's what you want. But yeah, I just want to say Happy New Year's, guys. I hope that you had a great time. I hope wrapping up the last year was good for you, and anything that happened last year that was bad, that you've put it in the past. And let's all look forward to the prospect of a bright, future and new year. And I guess my final question for you, if you want to head on over to my Instagram and answer it, do you have any resolutions? Maybe do you have any art resolutions? Let me know. But yeah, guys, before we go, don't forget, if you do want to follow me on Instagram, you can find the podcast's Instagram over at the Art Journey Pod. And if you want detailed show notes other than here in the app, you can find them at theartjourneypodcast.com. And then if you're interested in following me and my personal work, you can find me at Alex Agosto. That's ALEKSAGOSTO. And I also have a website, alexagosto.com. So, anyways, guys, I will see you again in the next episode. Bye.